It's here.
It's finally here. Adventist Television Network is here. The one-stop network for Christians or anyone wanting to learn how they can develop a more meaningful relationship with Christ. Tune in to Central Cable for daily programs on health and wellness, current events, relationships, spiritual growth, and of course, musical praise, all catering to our local urban audience.
The book of Revelation depicts God's people as flying in the midst of heaven as angels, proclaiming the everlasting gospel. ATN will allow you to reach the world with God's message and reap the harvest. But more, it will help you to grow as a disciple. It will keep you connected with your church. Above all things, it will prepare you to meet Jesus when he comes.
ATN is a non-profit initiative. If you want to do your small part in reaching people with the good news of Jesus, you can partner with ATN by offering your generous tax-deductible gifts. Adventist Television Network is an official partner of 3ABN's Dare to Dream Network. Keep up with special services, programs, and events brought to you by the local Seventh-day Adventist Church on Central Cable and streaming on Central Belize Mission Facebook and YouTube pages.
Brothers and sisters, we are looking forward for your financial support to the Adventist Television Network.
ATN and Dare to Dream, the urban Christian lifestyle television. Morning. Welcome to Defining Your Health Talk Show. I'm your host, Dinah Moralez. This morning we have a very special guest, Miss Leandra Langdon. Miss Langdon is here to talk on the topic nutrition, having a balanced diet. She's from the beautiful island of Barbados. She studied nutrition and dietetics in Cuba and is now a registered dietitian. She has done a couple years of volunteer work in her field, done various presentations and free consultation. She also assisted in the Barbados Diabetes Association. She currently serves as a nutritionist at La Lamalus Hospital in Santa Elena, Cayo. Good morning, Ms. Langdon. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Nutrition. It's a bit of a broad topic, especially when it comes to understanding what our bodies need in order to stay healthy and fit. In a nutshell, can you explain the term nutrition for us? We know there's two types of nutrition, macronutrients and micronutrients. How much does each of our body need in order to maintain a balanced diet?
Okay, now the first, as you said, nutrition could be very broad. So I'll just put everything in a nutshell. So you could simply say that nutrition is a science that studies how food affects the body and our health. And it's important as this is also linked with wellness and fitness as well, because nutrition, although it's quite broad, has other things that attribute to it. For example, we need to be healthy by what we eat and then also by our lifestyle, and those things, they coincide together. Now, as you rightfully said, there are what we classify as macronutrients and micronutrients. Just by the word macro, we know that it's more, and micro mean is with less. So for example, our macronutrients would include our carbohydrates, our proteins, and our fats, and our micronutrients would be our vitamins and our minerals. Now, when we look at our carbohydrates, it is described, because even if we break it down in percentages, and the percentages would be, for example, for a normal person that is not an athlete, especially is not an elite athlete or does not do strenuous work, like for example, a sugarcane cutter or a mason, just a normal person, your amount of calories that you will need for a day ranges between 1,800 or, for example, 2,000 or 2,200 calories. Now, out of those calories, you're going to break it down into percentages. For example, your carbohydrates will be between approximately 45 to 60% of that 2,000. Your proteins will be between 10 to 15%, and your fats will be between your 20, 25 up to 30%. Now, when we see this, you're like, okay, so what can I make sure I can get out of this that will be beneficial to me and my health? So with our carbohydrates, you're going to look for what we classify as your whole grains. Big word meaning instead of being processed, it's more in its whole form as possible. So for example, oats instead of your cereal that comes in a box. For example, oats instead of cornflakes or Lucky Charms, those things that are high in sugar. And especially when you check the ingredients, you'll see one of the first ingredients will be high corn syrup. And then, for example, if you move on, it will be like, for example, as I said, whole grains, which would be like brown rice, oats, cornmeal, corn. And then, for example, we'll have our ground food. So your potato, your cassava, your cocoyam, sweet potato, these sort of stuff. And then when we go to our proteins, we will look at what we classify as your lean cuts or your lean proteins, which will, for example, be your chicken, or especially your chicken breast, which has a less amount of fat, your fish. But then also we have our plant-based proteins, which would be, for example, your beans, your peas, your nuts, your seeds. And then when we go to fats, which is a very controversial area, and even though we saw with our percentages, yes, our body needs fats, but it's the type and the quality of fats that we need. So for example, that will be what we classify as the healthier fat versions. So for example, instead of manteca or pig fat or lard, you're going to go, or shortening. Yes, you will go more for your olive oil, your canola oil, which would be your vegetable oils, or the oils that come from our nuts and our seeds, for example, peanuts, sesame, these type of oils. They're better for us. Now, with everything that I said, it could easily be looked at and easy to remember if we think of it as with the my plate. So for example, with everything I just said, with this just gives us a visual aid. That's how I could say of how the portion's supposed to be. For example, we're supposed to have our grains, we're supposed to have our proteins, but then we also supposed to have our fruits and our vegetables, which also we get our fruits and vegetables do have some carbohydrates in them as well, but especially they're high in your vitamins, which we kind of classify as your regulators, because we know that we get our energy from our carbs and our fats as well. The proteins, they're essential because they're for repair and for building. But then our vitamins and minerals, you think of it as the patrol police, making sure that everything runs and goes as how it's supposed to. So for example, the My Plate is an initiative which was used, so it will give us a better visual aid, because remember we would have been in the era of, back in the day, the food pyramid. So all of that has been concise into one plate, where we have our carbohydrates, our proteins, our fruits, and our vegetables. And with this, you will see that our biggest influence should be coming from this area here. This area here with our fruits and our vegetables. And then not as much protein as we're seeing being pushed nowadays. And the carbs, we still need the carbs, but the quantities and the portions are going to be more from your whole grains and your ground food, those products which are less processed, which are even better for you.
Okay. I heard you mention earlier as you began speaking, when you said oats is better than your box cereal. I love to eat cereal, but I try to look for the healthier one, the one, as you mentioned, that have the whole grain. And you said something that I've been hearing a lot. People say, whenever you pick up something that you want to purchase, try to avoid buying things that has high fructose corn syrup. Can you explain to our viewers that are at home and probably don't understand what that means? And my mom was the first one who told me about that, and as soon as she told me, about some of the dangers of it, when I start picking up certain stuff that I like, I noticed that a lot of these items had this high fructose corn syrup. So can you explain what it is and why is it that they have asked us to kind of avoid buying items that has that ingredient?
Well, first thing, okay, good question. First of all, it's a cheaper mean of getting, as you rightfully said, you find in a lot of products. And all the reason why persons are not advocating that you stay away from the high fructose corn syrup is because it's added sugars, and added sugars have been linked to many diseases, especially, for example, the non-communicable ones that we know, like diabetes, because of the high amount of sugar that it causes, and also metabolic syndrome as well. Now, with that said, the reason we are trying to advocate you eat more your fruits and your vegetables, which have the sugar, but have the fiber along with it that does not give you that high spike. Now, high fructose corn syrup is from corn, which the reason that it was cultivated is because it was a cheaper source of getting this sugar added to food, because it helped to preserve it as well, and then it helped it to taste good. So it's a cheaper form of getting it, but it is not one of the healthier options, because you're looking to have more whole foods as possible, and then you want to go as much as plant-based, because the less processed your food is, the better it is for you. That's really what you want to aim. That's our aim in terms of making sure you get that ultimate health as possible. And as you rightfully said, most persons don't pay attention to reading your list of ingredients or understanding even the nutritional facts. And as a customer, as a consumer, you have the right to make sure that what the distributors or whatever the producers are selling, that you as a customer are receiving it. So it's not only their yes, they can sell you whatever, but you as a consumer, you have the right to make sure that you can investigate, look at what it is. And the thing about it is that there, even along with high fructose corn syrup, there are other additives added to items, sometimes for flavoring, sometimes for preserving, but you as a consumer have to know what this is and know how it could impact your life or impact your health. Yes.
Right. And we've seen so many times posts, billboards, signs that said you are what you eat. And that is very true. We are exactly what we eat. Whatever we put into our body is either fighting a disease or it's feeding it. With that said, can you tell us how important nutrition is as it relates to having a healthy lifestyle? Can you also explain what it means to have a balanced diet? And maybe for those who would be at home and said, but why do I need to have a balanced diet? Just eating and making sure that whenever I sit for my breakfast, my lunch, my dinner, I'm just putting in the amount of food I need. But it's not about really putting in terms of its quantity, but we need to be careful of what we're putting in. So maybe you can share some of the benefits that could come from having a balanced diet.
Okay. First of all, you asked what are the importance of what it means to have balanced diet and its benefits. First of all, when we look at a balanced diet, and even before we do that, the word diet, persons throw it around loosely because we think that a diet is this strategic way of eating certain type of this and certain type of that because you have this goal of, for example, weight loss, weight gain, or whatever. However, the word diet simply means how you eat as an individual. And so, for example, diet is different even all across the world, even in each household, because depending on how you as an individual eat, how you as a household eat, it does differ. Now, there's certain things that must be applied or you must take in consideration when you're considering the way how you eat as an individual. For example, is it adequate? For example, are you getting the amount of energy which comes from are you getting enough carbohydrates in all their forms, protein, fats, your vitamins and your minerals? Also, is it moderate? Because you don't want too much of this and too much of another stuff. Everything, no matter how good a thing is or how good the item is, you still have to make sure that you are indeed eating moderately. Also, is it balanced? Now you say, probably I talked about moderate, but how balance now could coincide with this? Balance is just making sure that you have a combination of foods and you're not eating just one type of food all the time. And then variety, which kind of coincides with what I just mentioned, meaning a variety of foods. There are different types of food, vegetables, ground food. There's so much. So you're not limited to just one type of food. However, depending on individuals, your upbringing, there are certain things that control how you eat as an individual. So for some persons, it could be the availability of food. For example, the pandemic that we're now in, for some households, it's going to be difficult to eat because for some people, they're not working. Money isn't flowing in as much as how it used to. For other persons, it might be getting transportation for food. For example, if you live in certain villages, which are far from where the mass production of food is, it's going to be difficult for you to receive food. The climate, this drought, for some countries that would have experienced when the locusts were in the area, and even hurricane, these things can affect as well. There are taboos, cultural values or traditions placed upon foods. So some persons don't eat food because of some superstition or something like that. And even cultural values in terms of what a particular culture views a certain food as well. Then there's religious practices and beliefs that play in with food, habits and preferences. And then also experiences with foods, whether you like them or you dislike them, that also alters that. One that's very important is social status, finance, being able to budget to even get food. And then that comes with social and economic and geographic factors as well. Being able to be knowledgeable about food, because some persons, they don't know what they're supposed to eat, how they're supposed to eat, and that plays a vital role in how they consume food as well. For psychological problems, for example, if persons are having psychological disorders, like for example, anorexia, bulimia, and orthorexia, which is a new one, which is persons who are just fixated on eating whatever is considered healthy. And then your cooking and preparation of food as well. Now, wrap this up in a nutshell. A person has to be at the stage where they're willing to adapt or learn or even change so that they can indeed get to that stage where they can eat well and be healthy. Now, when we do not eat properly, our bodies tell us, and our bodies give us signals. Now, it's us to pay attention to this. Some easy ones, for example, will be, for example, disorders in skin. For some people are very sensitive like that. Once their body's going through something, there might be disorders in their skin, in their mouth, lesions, cuts, wounds not being able to heal rapidly. With young children, retardation in growth and even in their psychological development as well. Those are signs of poor nutrition. And then even with poor nutrition, well, we classify as malnutrition, meaning that you could be undernourished or overnourished. Undernourished, which is what we see in some developing countries where the availability is not there because of poverty. And those are sometimes conditions out of their control where they cannot handle. So also with that, we find that there are some people, because of poor nutrition, lack of energy, lack of strength to do activities, changes in personalities. So a person who could have been happy all the time because of changes that would have been made in their nutrition. You might see, for example, they're very apathetic. They don't care. They don't have no energy. They don't have no ganas for life or anything like that. You can see that happening as well. And now when we look at overnutrition, we find this happens in developed countries where there's the excessive food. So you find that persons with obesity comes the non-communicable diseases, because most persons, not all, most persons who are obese, you put yourself at that, you put yourself out there to be susceptible to catch these non-communicable diseases, hypertension, diabetes, cancers, and the list does go on. Now, easy changes that a person can make to move from poor nutrition to proper nutrition is through education. So understanding how food can impact my body, is where the change can be brought about. Um, Back in the day when our great great grandmothers and grandfathers, their diet was considered simple, or the diet of a poor person, which was stuff that they grew, for example, or animals that they had. But it wasn't so much a lot of meat and processed food. Now we've come into the era of industrialization and things have changed and improved. However, we have adapted the Western lifestyle, which is what we see on the commercials: burgers, burgers, pizzas, all these are things. So these are considered which are foods of luxury and in foods to indulge in. However, foods do not have positive impacts on our bodies because they're high in saturated fats, they're high in salts, and they're very carbohydrate dense or meat dense, which have adverse problems in our bodies. As I mentioned before, everything has to be in moderation. So what we should be pushing more of is more plant-based foods. For example, more fruits, more vegetables, more beans, which are very accessible to us, more carbohydrate dense. And instead of when we have a plate of food, we plan the meat we have the meat and then we plan the meal around the meat, when it should be the opposite. We should have our fruits and vegetables, and then we should plan the other sides to complement that. And that's a good place to start. And as I mentioned before, just by looking at my plate, where the fruits and vegetables are what the majority of the plate is made up of, and the others fall in place, that's an easy reminder that, okay, instead of having this side with a lot of meat and a lot of carbohydrates, let me just make that switch. And as an individual, you have to be willing and able to want to change, because habit is something that's hard to be broken. Most of us would have been brought up on this particular way, and then for some persons, they don't change only when sickness has crept upon them. And then for some, they still have time. For others, it might be too late. So it's an individual. It's something that you have to do as an individual, whether you want to have this change in your life or not, for proper health.
Yes, well said, Miss Langdon. And I want to put a pin on something that you mentioned earlier. You said that, people, because of the COVID-19 situation, people may not be able to give their diet the attention that it needs, putting in the right food. Now, many people believe that in order to eat healthy, you need to have money. It may be a myth for some, for others, maybe it's something that they really believe in. Can you speak on this and probably share some grocery items that the average person in Belize can purchase that will help them to improve their diet?
I really like that question that you asked, because that's a growing trend that you're seeing. Persons believe that when they have to make a change in, especially in terms of their dietary habits, that it has to be expensive, because unfortunately we are seeing a lot of healthy foods being placed out there, and because it has a name like organic on it, that gives it the opportunity for the price to be bumped up. So that causes the items to be expensive. However, there are lots of items out there that are not expensive. For example, beans. Beans are amazing because they're high in fiber. And then they're also a source of protein. And then you could combine that with your rice, and there you have a complete protein. So those are options that you can take as well. As I mentioned before, instead of buying the box cereal, although some persons might like the box cereal, why don't try to switch and buy the tub of oats, which is, for example, kind of the same price, around 5-6 change. So you can make that as a swap for breakfast as well. And that's a whole grain that you can implement into your diet as well. Now, in terms of fruits and vegetables, that's where it gets kind of touchy there. Most fruits and vegetables that are in season tend to be cheaper compared to those which are sold outside of their season. So always try to aim to buy things that are in season, which would be kind of cheaper. The unfortunate thing is that with all going on, fruits and vegetables, the price is going up. Now, what I can suggest is try an investment. When I say that, what I mean is everyone now is going on the bandwagon of planting their own stuff.
Right.
And you have seen that persons even get plastic bags. Put the dirt in the plastic bag and you put your seeds in it. Whatever you can find. Some persons have access to in their where they live, and they live in space to have lots of land. So you have that for you. There are other persons who are limited to that. Buckets or containers or shoes, whatever you can find, use that to grow your stuff. And for example, growing seeds, for example, you can grow your own broccoli, your own lettuce, your own tomato. The possibilities are endless. And the thing with these type of seeds are that, for example, lettuce and tomato, beans, beets, radishes, these things, radishes are the best because they take like a month to grow. Actually be able to
Okay.
read them. These others, they take approximately 3-4 months. But the advantage is with SPCs, one seed is a plant. So, for example, this is an investment because you can make sure that you can have lettuce for a while, and especially if you grow a certain amount every couple of months or weeks, you're assured of making sure that you're getting lettuce for a while. Now, there's some persons that might be okay. I can't. I don't think I have time for waiting that long. Seedlings is another option that you can look into buying as well, which are the same plant but in a more mature stage, so the waiting period is not so long. Um, but as you rightfully said, we are going through a time which is for most, and it what might be easier for a certain family or a certain individual might not be easier for this, and you're like, send this. Try to find what is best for you. For example, um, I know a lot of persons now when they're thinking of eating healthy, they're thinking of eating, for example, the vegetarian sausages and the vegetarian burgers because they are not as um, calorie dense as a beef burger or chicken patty. Now, at the end of the day, all these things are processed foods
Right.
and they are expensive. And as I would have mentioned earlier, making sure you have whole foods are in their whole state, are close to their whole state as possible. That's the aim that you want to go for because you're assured that they have a rich amount of nutrients in them and that they're complete foods. Another way to think of it is, for example, foods that kind of spoil easily. For example, when you buy your fruits and vegetables, you might not be able to buy them in bulk because at the end of the week or at the end of 2 weeks, they might not be as fresh as they were before. So
Right.
those are things that you have to buy and in shorter spaces, but those are the things that are better for you and healthier as well. So those are good options. And also in terms of planting, if you can't afford to buy the seeds, there's certain for example, when you buy purchased tomatoes from the store or from the market, you can save those seeds are in the tomatoes and you can grow them as well. The same thing with the lettuce. After you cut off the bottom of the lettuce, you can save that and you can plant to get new crop as well. So it's also with being innovative in this time, especially to make sure that your health is assured for you and your family by whatever means possible.
Right. Well said, Miss Leandra. At this moment, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Abigail.
Yes, Gran?
Abigail, I can't breathe well.
Granny, we need to go to the hospital to get you checked out.
No! I'm fine.
Yes, Gran, we need to go now to get you treated. Now, before it's too late.
No, 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 no.
Grandma, we need to go for all of us.
No, no, no.
Stop.
If you are having flu-like symptoms, please call us immediately for medical guidance.
If you have chronic conditions such as diabetes and you're experiencing symptoms such as shortness of breath or chest pain, please also seek medical attention immediately. We lost a lot of people this year. We don't want to lose you too. Please seek help if necessary. Call us at 0800 664 2273. Continue to wear your mask at all times. Keep physical distance when in public and stay at home unless absolutely necessary. This message has been brought to you by the Ministry of Health and Wellness.
According to the Center for Disease Control, men die on average 5 years earlier than women. While women are expected to live an average of 81 years at birth, men are expected to live an average of 76 years, with non-Hispanic blacks having the lowest life expectancy at nearly 71 years compared to white and Hispanic males. That's a fact, but there's hope. One of the factors contributing to worse health in men is the higher prevalence of cigarette smoking among males than among females at any age. By quitting the habit, males can reduce their chances of dying from any cause and experience a longer and happier life. So don't delay, quit today.
Welcome back to Defining Your Health Talk Show. Today we have Miss Leandra Langdon, a nutritionist from La Luz Hospital in Kaya, who is here talking about nutrition, the importance of having a balanced diet. So far, she has told us what nutrition is, the importance of paying keen attention to our diet, and also the benefit that comes from giving our diet the attention that it deserves. Miss Langdon, we now know, what it takes for us to maintain a good nutrition. However, it's easier said than done. When our busy schedule takes the most of our time, we find that we pay little attention to our meal plan. You spoke already about the signs and symptoms of poor nutrition and how we can identify if we're suffering from this. But can you take a little time to share some of the tips that our viewers at home can practice that will prevent them from having this condition?
Okay. First of all, as an individual, you have to be intentional if you want this change for your life. And the truth about it, yes, it's easier said than done, and it's habits that have to be broken in order to reach this stage. The first thing would be taking small steps, as I like to say, taking baby steps. For example, if you're a person that you totally do not like vegetables, the first thing I would advocate is you have to go on a scavenger hunt to try to find the things that you like, the type of vegetables that you like. So for example, even if it has to start with tomatoes and it's only tomatoes that you like, get to the stage where you find different ways to preparing them and then easily try to transition to another one. This is especially difficult for parents who are trying to get children to eat vegetables as well. One of the easiest ways to get the children is to get them involved. For example, as I would have mentioned before, easy things like planting, get the children involved in that so they realize that, okay, this is my plant. And by that, they could be educated, okay, these plants are going to make you strong, mighty and strong. So children like that, they like to believe that they could be superheroes. Also with that is when in terms of cooking in the kitchen, preparing the meals, allow them to prepare the meals with you so they feel that they have attributed to family dinner. So they would want to eat what they would have prepared. Parents especially, you have to lead by example. So for example, you have to eat what you're telling children to eat. Because for example, you can't be telling children to eat their beans, their string beans or their greens or whatever, but you are staying away from them like the plague. The children, they're seeing this and it's like, it can't be do as I say, but not as I do. You have to lead by example as well. Other ways would be in terms of, as I would have mentioned before, buying what is in season. That is the easy thing to do. But also with trying to eat healthier, it's understanding how small steps in our diet can indeed impact us for the best and also for our health. Even, for example, trying to have 1 or 2 meatless days throughout the week. That's another change that could be made as well. Because I know some persons are carnivores, but others are omnivores, which are they eat the meat and the vegetables as well. But you want to get to that stage where you try to be as close to plant-based as possible. Plant-based means it can even help to minimize chances of receiving different of getting different diseases like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, hypertension, cancers. So you want to get to that close to that stage as possible. So as would have mentioned, even if cutting down the amount of meat that you eat in a household or as an individual, these are small tips that could be applied as well. That could even change, for example, your blood count in terms of your cholesterol. It could bring it down. Persons who suffer from gout and these type of diseases as well. These things by even changing your diet. Another thing as well, trying to cut out sugars and added sugars, especially. One of the best ways you could do this is cut down the amount of sodas and sweet drinks that we drink. For some persons, it's hard because for some persons, that's all they know and they don't know what water is. And it's hard for them to drink water and incorporate more water in their life. But did you know that even by drinking the amount of water you're supposed to drink, which is enough that your urine is pale, there's so many benefits attributed to that as well. Because did you know that by drinking more water, your skin naturally becomes smooth? It reduces the chances of halitosis, aka bad breath. So all these things can be attributed with little steps. If you don't like the taste of water, try putting lime in it. I know that works for some persons, but little things that you could do: walking around with a bottle so that you see that visual aid that you have to drink water, even using the app on the phone that reminds you to keep drinking water. So this could help as well. Another tip that could help you with nutrition is and making sure that your body functions the way it's supposed to is exercise and making sure you get a lot of sleep, because you could be eating well, but if you are not sleeping well and you're getting like 5 or 4 terrible hours of sleep, it's like you're defeating the whole purpose. The body works together in unison, and you have to take care of it. Even yes, your diet is important, but how you take care of your body, making sure that you are active. Even a simple thing as walking, that's good. You can start there and then you could advance wherever. However, simple thing is trying to be active. 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes every 3 times a week. That's good. But eating well, drinking enough water, exercising, and making sure you get a lot of sleep. These things can indeed improve your health for the future.
And you mentioned something earlier when you began speaking about the kids, getting them involved in preparing the meals. And I've tried that with my daughter. It does work because, it gives you, apart from spending time with your child, it gives you the opportunity to educate them on the importance of, eating their vegetables and their fruits. And I remember hearing my daughter sometime when she would go to church or when she's around with her friends, she will tell them, you want to be strong, you need to eat your veggies and your fruits because that's the only way you'll be strong. But I think it goes way back to when they were a little bit younger, I remember when I had my child, my daughter, when she went from, milk to solids, my mom was like, okay, from this stage, you need to start training her taste buds to like fruits and veggies. And so my mom will tell me how to get the different fruits. Like each week we would try a new fruit. We'll put it in the blender, we'll blend it, so that she can eat it. We also tried the pumpkin, like all the different vegetables. And I realized that it did work because as she grew older and, she was able to eat just as how we eat. I give stuff and she's not like making up her face or saying, oh, I don't want that, that's yucky. She actually, like, the taste was familiar to her taste buds. So I think a lot of the time when you find adults that, they are so anti-vegetable or fruits, because there's a lot of them, they would say, oh, I'm not into fruits, I'm not into vegetables, like it's not something that they prefer. But I think maybe at their initial stage, maybe they weren't offered some of these things. And so when now they're trying it, it seems so off. It's not a familiar taste to them. And I think probably maybe you can tell us is there any kind of link between, from an infant stage, offering them these fruits and vegetables?
There is, because as you rightfully said, you rightfully mentioned, it's acquired taste. And for example, from the transition from breast milk to solids, it's what you give your children. And the first thing they normally tell us that when parents are at this stage of introducing new foods to their children, do not add sugar, do not add salt, because the children, at this age, their taste buds are very delicate. So yes, at times they might spit out the food, but it takes the children at least a couple times, I think more than 10, I can't remember, but it takes them a couple times for them to get acquired to this food. And then sometimes, if they have not been exposed to fruits and vegetables, this can lead up to what happened to them in adulthood, where they don't eat them. For other persons, that might not be the case. The case might be that they would have been totally healthy when they were younger. However, they would have had traumatic experiences with food, or some of them just would have been rebellious, or some of them just want something else, and whatever has been exposed to them in their adulthood, that's what they gravitate to, and they don't have a parent that tell them, okay, you have to eat this, you have to that. They're adult, they can eat whatever, do whatever. But as I rightfully said, is an individual, as an adult, you have to make these changes for yourself, for your health. And the thing about it is that everything in modern foods that aren't, you would indeed pay the consequences for it later down in your life. So it's all about making the right changes, making the baby, make small steps, so that you can indeed get to that stage. Health.
6 months since we have been living in a pandemic. Due to the different crises our country has been facing, we have all had our shares of ups and downs. During this lockdown, and even now, the uncertainty of when this will all be over gets to us at times. I know during the first lockdown in March, not being able to go inside, when it was like a total lockdown, you found yourself being in the couch, enjoying your favorite movie, watching series after series, and then comes lunchtime, or then comes dinner time, and because you're so into these series and just that chillax mode, when it's time for you to make something, you're like, oh, let me just reach out to my comfort food. So you would go to your fast foods, your burger, your fries, your pizza, anything that is quick so that you can eat. Now, can you explain to us, or maybe can you share how important it is to maintain a balanced diet and good nutrition, especially during COVID-19 pandemic, because we want our immunity to be at its best? As a follow-up question to that, can you also differentiate between good and bad food as it relates to good nutrition, and the importance of being moderate in what we eat?
Okay. That's a really, really good question. In terms of making sure that our what we eat, especially in this pandemic, as rightfully said, we have to protect our immunity. And with that, the food we make sometimes could be influenced by if we can get access to them or not. Foods that are better for us, because I'm not going to go into superfoods and stuff like that. Your fruits and your vegetables, those are the game changers, followed by your legumes, for example, your beans, your peas, your nuts, your seeds, and your grains and your proteins. Now, in terms of, as you rightfully said, when you are relaxing, you're not paying attention to what you're eating, sometimes what we gravitate to will be more of our processed foods. For example, ramen, cornflakes, snacks, chips, chocolate. So those are the things that we gravitate to, which are very calorie dense, and they lack the amount of vital nutrients or energy that you need. But some people might say, but I take multivitamins, so I'm getting the amount of vitamins and minerals that I need. However, the body is such a magnificent organism that it prefers to get these vitamins from their natural sources, from their fruits and their vegetables, from their raw materials, compared to a supplement. Because the dangers with taking supplements is that once you're eating a balanced diet, all that you're supposed to, your fruits, your vegetables, your grains, your proteins, there no need, and you're not sick that your body is deficient in certain nutrients. You don't really need to take supplements because your body's getting what it needs. However, with these supplements is that you can get points where you're getting too much. And as I rightfully said, too much of a good thing still isn't good because it can cause adverse reactions in the body. For example, the body needs vitamin A, and we can get vitamin A from, if, for example, if you eat red meat, liver, you get it from there. If you eat your fruits and your vegetables, sweet pepper, tomatoes, they're beta carotene, but gets converted to vitamin A in the body. So you do get it from those sources. However, when you have too much, when you're taking these supplements and you get too much, then you get vitamin A toxicity, which can lead your skin. Stay away from the processed foods and try to stay close to the whole foods as well as possible. An easy link for this would be looking at the list of ingredients. If the list of ingredients is a bit too long with a lot of words you can't pronounce, that should be like, oh, what are these? Especially when it has a lot of colorants and preservatives compared to items where you can tell, okay, this is peanut butter. The ingredients are peanuts, salt, sugar, something like that, meaning that they're as close to its natural state as possible. I'm not saying that there might be times where you don't want to eat a chocolate. I'm not saying that because I know persons like to label, okay, what's good food, what's bad food. Everything is in moderation. Especially if you have children and they have been exposed to this type of food as well. First of all, you don't want to use food as rewards because then you don't want to have a wrong relationship with food as well. You want food to be enjoyed and not to be used as a reward or mechanism. Understanding the composition of foods that make you feel health, that make you feel druggy, give you a sugar rush, and then leave you feeling drowsy after. Those are the foods you want to stay away from. So, for example, unhealthy foods will be foods, and you think, okay, how to say this easier? Everything is in moderation. Foods that are considered bad for you are foods which are full of toxins and foods that aren't safe and could impact the body negatively. For example, which have not been preserved, foods, bad meats, things that have been spoiled. That's what they classify as bad foods. Foods that, like chocolates and chips and stuff like that, those are things that you would consider as eaten in moderation, not to abuse the system, as I would say. Because there's nothing wrong with enjoying a pack of chips, but instead of eating a whole pack by yourself, what about sharing it with your family and understand that, okay, this is a one-time treat, but not a regular basis, instead of thinking that, okay, you're deprived of this certain type of food and then you push this type of food and then resistance, and that's not what you want to have. That's not the relationship you want to have with food. You asked me another question. I forgot.
The follow-up question was that how important it is to maintain a balanced diet in order to keep our immunity at its best during this COVID-19 pandemic.
Sticking with the staples, that's the best thing I could say. Sticking with foods that are cheaper at this moment, but still beneficial. For example, beans, flour tortilla, corn tortilla, these type of foods. Because especially for Corona right now, you want to make sure that you're at your optimal health. And however, as things are not that cheap for certain persons, or depending on your preference, it might not be that cheap. But making sure that you get your staples, things that you can afford, things that are beneficial for you. Beans, making sure you get leaner cuts of meat, your corn tortilla, your flour tortilla, your rice, and also, for example, your greens, your fruits and your vegetables that are beneficial. For example, I'm not saying for you to buy peaches and strawberries, which are more on the expensive side compared to, for example, bananas or oranges, depending on where you're getting them from. These are other options that can be used, but that are at the cheaper spectrum of stuff. And understanding that the immune system, the body, depending on how healthy you are, your body is able to fight back easier. It's looking at a car, making sure you put premium gas assures you of making sure that it runs efficiently compared to if you put poor quality or even the incorrect type of fuel that the car needs. Making sure that our bodies receive premium foods, which some persons might classify as poor people food because tortilla and beans are poor. However, the nutrient quality of these foods is very rich. So these are what you classify as your premium foods, rich foods for your body, which your body can relish in terms of the health benefits, making sure that your immune system is healthy and your pocket stays intact as well.
Right. I remember at the beginning of your presentation, you had a little foam plate where you gave like a little visual idea of what we need to fill our plates with. But maybe for some of our viewers, you kept saying you need to put your legumes in, you need to put your fruits, your veggies, your protein. They might not really understand. So let's make it a little bit practical for them. And maybe you can give us a meal plan. We start from breakfast, lunch, and supper. Just give an example of a plate setup that maybe they can say, oh, no, I get what she's saying. Like, I need to add this, Let's give them something practical to be able to practice this at home.
Okay, the plate is back again. Now, for example, with breakfast, as I would have mentioned, flour tortilla, beans. Flour tortilla will be what we classify will be coming from the area of grains. Your beans from protein. Now, for example, avocado is in season, so you could have sliced avocado with that, and that would be classified as your fruits and your vegetables. Or you might not be in the mood of that, and you might just want a fruit. There's banana, there's orange. Another option you can have for breakfast would be a bowl of oats, which come from your grain, and then you have that with milk. Your type of milk could be dairy or non-dairy. Non-dairy options could be even coconut milk you could have. So there, and then also you could have that with a bowl of fruits, or you could just have it on its own. And you could put, for example, for some persons, they might prefer to have it with some raisins, and that could still classify as your fruit as well because it's dried currants, dried grapes. Now, for our lunch, I know rice is a staple, so you can rice, which classifies as being part of our greens as well. You can have ground food, mashed potatoes, cassava, sweet potato. You can even have pasta, and that could be here, or even corn tortilla, flour tortilla, that could be here. Now with your proteins, that could be any type of meat, or it could be your beans as well. It all takes part in here. Now with your salads, you can have, for example, your tossed salad, your steamed vegetables, your greens, like your callaloo, your chia, spinach, any stuff like that. Anything that is to your preference, you can have along with this. Tomatoes, cucumbers, the list is endless. For your supper, the same thing. It could be whatever grain you want to use, even a sandwich. So for example, it could be 2 slices of bread with some leftover chicken or some options. Yes, beans, anything, which would be from your protein area. And then that could be in the same sandwich, you can have some lettuce, tomato, onion, whatever you want to put in it, or you could have some fruits. I know some persons are into drinking smoothies because they don't want anything heavy at night, and that's okay, but you can build your smoothie as well following this table. So, for example, you could put something heavy and substantial in it, like your oats, and then that could be followed with. Um, I know some person might say, okay, but if it's a smoothie, you want to have some type of protein supplement. Did you know a very cheap protein supplement instead of buying the ones in the bottle, like whey powder and stuff like that? You can use peanut butter. So you can have oats, peanut butter for those who aren't allergic to nut butters, and then you could have as your milk as well. It could either be coconut milk, it could be a dairy, anything like that. And then you can add either greens. I know a lot of persons like to put greens like spinach. You could put any type of fruit, banana, whatever is accessible to you. You can put, and I think that could be an idea of what you can follow. However, the main point you want to focus on is making sure this is practically, especially associated with portions, because that's what you want to make sure that majority of your foods are coming from what I listed as your regulators, the policemen, your fruits and vegetables, which are very high in your vitamins and your minerals, which are good for your body, making sure that your immune system is in peak form.
This should be the bigger part of our plate, and then we have our grains and our proteins. Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
You just gave an example for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Is there a specific amount that one should have for these different meals? Because I know some people say you should eat the biggest amount at lunch. Some people disagree. No, your breakfast should be the biggest part of your day. And some people say, well, I don't have time for breakfast. I hardly get time to sit for lunch at work. So my biggest meal is supper. Is there a set, or is there an advised amount that should be used for these 3 separate meal plans?
That's an excellent question that you asked. I love the slogan, which is breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, dinner like a pauper. Reason for this is you would have spent your 7-8 hours sleeping, and you wake up. And the reason for the name, break fast, breaking the fast that you would have for 7-8 hours. And the reason you need a hearty breakfast is because most of your activities and yes, you do most stuff in the morning. So that's why you need that burst of that full plate or that full heavy breakfast, because you want enough energy to give you to sustain for the morning period. Now, lunch should be not as heavy as breakfast, because you just want to carry on to the end of the day. And the reason for supper being as a pauper is that for some persons eat twice, just 2 meals. Some persons eat 3, some persons eat 4. But the reason you want to eat supper as a pauper is because you want something substantial, but nothing too heavy, because and that's the reason you're supposed to eat early, your dinner early, so that you don't go to sleep on a heavy stomach, but that you have enough fuel in your system to carry you through the night. But breakfast is important. It is indeed the most important meal of the day. I know there's the thing of intermediate fasting. Some persons prefer only using light stuff for breakfast and heavier stuff for lunch. However, understanding how our bodies work in terms of we need fuel in the morning to carry us through the day, that's most important.
Okay. As we wrap up here now, I have a last question for you, Ms. London. I've heard people mention it before that it's not good to eat. There's 2 things that people like to mention to you when you're sitting down to eat. One is you should not drink while you're eating, because you need to give time for your food to digest. You should you should drink your water either an hour before you eat or an hour after. They've also mentioned when you're eating fruits. You know, sometimes for lunch you would have your lunch and then you will have a fruit bowl. They said that it's advisable to eat your fruits before you, like an hour or so before you eat, because something happens in terms of, like, whenever you would eat your regular lunch and you eat your fruit, that, you know, the fruit isn't going to be digested. It's, you know, they have some sort of way in which I was listening to a presentation one time on the radio station, and I heard when there was this person on talking about the importance of eating, and similar to what we're doing here. And they said you want to give your fruits enough time to digest so that it doesn't ferment on your stomach. Because if you eat a heavy meal and then after that you go and you eat your fruit bowl, you know, your fruit is just going to be on your stomach. It's going to ferment. It's not going to be digested. Can you explain a little there in terms of these two ideas that people like to mention?
Okay, with the eating and drinking, whew, um, I am a culprit of that. But so you can see that all of us we have our challenges.
Right.
The thing about it is that the truth of you are supposed to drink before you eat, as you mentioned, the hour before, the hour after, and that's the reason that you're supposed to have drink enough a lot of water throughout the day. So it's like do not wait till lunchtime when you want to get that meal in because you can get full up on the fluid and not on the food. And then also it's even more difficult when you drink juices and drinks because you're drinking your calories and they always advise you not to drink your calories, make sure you eat them. So it is advisable to not eat and drink, but to do this an hour before or hour after. Uh, if you are thirsty, it's advisable that you try to drink throughout the day so that when you get to that point of mealtime, you don't have that conflict there. In terms of the eating fruit on an empty stomach and stuff like that, this is only attributed to persons who have a sensitive stomach. Because, like for example, there's some persons who have problem digesting food or how they eat certain foods can affect them. For example, some persons, the acidity of tomatoes is too much for them, or even for of lime or pineapple is too much for them. So these, as you mentioned, these are only for those specific persons. But for the normal person, the amount of if you eat fruits or vegetables on empty stomach, that does not really affect you. How it does affect, sorry, is the amount of fiber that's in the body. And especially for persons who are diabetic, they normally tell them, okay, don't eat too much sugary stuff. And that's why a good option for them would be fruit or vegetables because they are very high in fiber, which helps the body not to spike the sugar not to spike too much, but it causes it to actually gradually rise instead of that spike that causes the hyperglycemia and then dropped for the hypoglycemia. So for that purpose, but for normal persons, it does not have a adverse effect. No, the combination is actually good.
Okay. As we close, Ms. Langdon, do you have any final words that you would like to share with our viewers? Something that they can take away from this program today of how they can improve their very own diet at home?
Eating well is easy. It does not have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be expensive foods of quinoa and kombucha and all these sort of stuff like that. Not saying these foods are bad, but stick with what you know, stick with what you like. And from there, you can evolve into eating at that stage where you are as close to plant-based and whole foods as possible. An easy step would be try to cut down on the amount of processed foods. For example, if you're a hot dog fanatic, instead of eating hot dog 3 times a week, try to drop one day, so it's 2. Try to incorporate some type of fruit or vegetable in your diet. If you can't stomach to eat it, try to incorporate it in some meal or a sauce or something somewhere where you don't see it, but you know it's there. Little steps could be taken to achieve great results. Try to drink as much water as possible. Water is your friend. You want your urine to be as pale as possible, not to be yellow, not to be interesting colors. Look at it this way. The more that you take care of yourself and what you put into it, it will help you to live a healthier, longer life. If you want to get to that stage that you want to even do like movies that you wake up with flawless breath and a beautiful face, that can be achieved just by eating well, drinking your water, resting well. Take care of your body and you will reap dividends in the future.
Well said. I want to thank you, Ms. Langdon, for joining us today and for accommodating us out of your busy schedule We appreciate everything that you have spoke about today, and we know that our viewers at home are also very appreciative of the advice, the counsel, the tips that you have shared with us, and we now know how we can have a balanced diet, which will improve our health. We also want to thank our viewers at home for watching us. We invite you to tune in again to find another edition of Planning Your Health.
Thank you for having me.